Somehow we lost our way. I don't know how we did it. We went so off course, and now you like to numb your pain. Does this mean that we're over? Gotta let me know. Yeah, the ball is rolling past the two of us, but your feet ain't moving. Are you cool with us? And I'm caught in your mind, but it's like you've had enough. I wish you just tell me to go. Lay it on me, lay it on me,
TLS's go for main engine start.
Go at throttle up. Negative return.
Yeah. We're on YouTube. We're going over the intro music because we're 1 month out of practice. We're back. I'm back. You've been here the whole time.
It's like trying to remember how to ride a bike again.
Yeah,
It'll come back. It'll happen.
But what I did was an excellent strategy of lining up one of my favorite people on this planet, Caleb Henry. Welcome to the show for the first time. We've never had him on Off-Nominal, Jake. What the hell?
I know. It's one of these guests that we're like, oh, hey, we should get Caleb on. How have we not done this already?
Like approximately 2 years ago when we were drinking together at Yards when the pandemic didn't exist and we were all together.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome, Caleb. How you doing, man?
Yeah, it's good to see you guys. You know, last time, actually, when we all met in person, that was my first time seeing the ISS fly overhead.
That is right.
Okay.
I remember us all rushing out of the brewery and being like, oh, there it is. And people were like, why are there like half a dozen like millennials hanging out outside this brewery pointing at the sky in Philadelphia?
Generally, a large group of people pointing at something on Spring Garden in Philadelphia is not great, but at that moment, it was excellent.
It's funny
I forgot about that, man.
When you say that, like I actually have to stop and think because there's been far more than one occasion where I've dragged everybody out of a party or a bar to be like, I gotta show you this thing, man. It's amazing. Awesome. Cool. So we're going to talk about some satellite stuff today. We got all kinds of stuff to
I've got a new
about.
kid. Caleb's got a new job.
Oh, yeah.
Jake.
I'm the same. Nothing's different.
Cool.
I do need
new haircut, new glasses.
I am looking at my hair here and I'm like, it's time. It is time to you don't remember as often during the pandemic that you need your haircut. That's the truth of it. But
every live stream we'll check in.
Yeah, thanks. That's about the frequency I need one. So, you guys want to do drinks? So what are you guys drinking?
Who's starting?
Anthony,
you gotta pick who starts, Jake. I'm starting.
Anthony.
Well, first I'm gonna show off my medicine hat bottle opener that I'm using because I always forget that's in my office. So thanks to Jake for that. I'm opening right here an old trusty because long story, but I couldn't go to the fancy beer store today. I've got a perpetual IPA from. I've got to get my head out of the shot so it focuses on the beer. This one's from Trogs. It's an old steady. It's been a while since I've done an old steady, so I figured this is the one to do it. Bring it back. Trogs.
Nice.
PA. Very important right now.
Pennsylvania, very important.
For some reason, it's in the news. Spending about $1 billion on our TV networks, I think, but it's a good spot. That's what I got.
Cool. I like Trogs.
It's delicious. It's delicious. That's a good spot for a meetup, by the way. Future Off-Nominal people.
That's like outside of town, right?
It's all the way in Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Hershey, okay.
Yeah.
So that's outside of town. Yeah.
It's outside of town by like 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Caleb, what do you got?
So, as Anthony knows, or maybe both of you know, I just got back from a winery, and so I've already had probably like half a bottle of wine today.
It's just front loaded. Tell us about the winery.
I don't know if I'm going to drink during this session. That was earlier this afternoon, so we'll see how it goes. But in the event that I do, I brought with me. Can I get this to focus?
Oh yeah.
This is a 3-star peppercorn saison from 3 Stars Brewing Company, which I really love. It's probably my favorite brewery in DC. So shout out to them. I wish I could describe this for you. It's just a good beer. It says ale brewed with spices, and that does it for me.
I like that he's talking himself into actually opening this up as he gives the pitch for it too.
I need to understand more about the peppercorn part though, because this is not a natural fit for beer for me.
So you'd think that it would be spicy, and it's not. I have had many bad experiences with beers where they're like, we put spices in this, and like it just turns into like somebody dumped like a whole like cupboard of spices in, and it's a mistake. But this one is good. I think maybe the fact that they just stuck with one spice, and so like it just feels kind of crisp, but also flavorful.
Okay.
It holds its own.
All right. Well, next time I'm in DC, I want to try that.
Fair.
I actually I'm kind of bucking the trend this month, Anthony. So we had Canadian Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago, and we actually celebrated late. We did it a weekend late, so it was last weekend for me, and I had some beer, I will admit, and it was like a lot of like really rich craft beer, unfiltered, heavy, like the kind of beer that you really should only have one or two. And I just drank too much of it, and now I'm like, I like kind of need to dry out a little bit on like the fancy stuff. So I went for just like my old standby of
Nice.
like very simple, light.
Like you rolled into any airport bar
Any airport
to
bar,
remember those.
got my Stella Artois, and
It's usually
it's
the
not
only thing that's worthwhile in an airport bar. Let's be honest.
exactly. Yeah, it's not a Jake size bottle. It's a normal.
No, it's
human
regular.
bottle,
It looks so tiny. It looks like one of the little alcohol bottles you buy on airplanes.
I got two just in case, but so yeah, that's what I'm drinking today. Very very straightforward. But I'm still not a classless fool. I got a glass. So.
Gold rim? Do you do the gold rim thing?
I don't have one of those. I used to have a couple of them and they all broke, and I haven't replaced them. So
It feels like a shtick. That feels like gold tipped HDMI cables. You know what I mean?
yeah. Oh yeah, it doesn't do anything.
Okay.
So I too have a glass because I was told that we were supposed to have something to pitch here
Oh,
on this very show, and I couldn't think of what it would be. But I tend to hate drinking out of a can, and since I just showed off a can, I brought with me. I don't know if you can see this. It's Astronomy on Tap.
oh, nice.
Is an event that used to take place here in DC. I say used to because pandemic, and I admit I haven't followed up with them as closely, so perhaps they're still doing these talks virtually. But the idea was that they would get like 3 astronomers or 3 space professionals together in a bar and have them give talks, and then they would have space bingo, and if you won, you got a glass, which or if you like spoke or anything. So yeah, I got one of those from attending said event.
Did you win
And
bingo, or were you like a space professional at this event?
I have done both.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, although like so they have a rule that's like astronomers are not supposed to participate in space bingo, and I said I am not an astronomer, so therefore I can participate in space bingo. But after winning a glass for me and a glass for my roommate, I said I should stop playing space bingo, and so I just have this here one glass, and that's it. Now I'm just a spectator at these things.
That's fair. That's probably fair.
They retired his jersey in the rafters.
Yeah. It's the retired hockey player showing up to a pickup game in the street, being like, "Hey, you guys need an extra."
Slightly overweight Eric Lindros, as he
Like,
still
no,
does.
no professional run. No, I'm not a professional.
Where should we start, Jake? We got a lot of topics, man.
Yeah, there is a lot.
Do you want to start with Caleb news or non-Caleb news?
Yeah, actually, well, Caleb, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit and maybe talk about what you used to do, and then we can talk about what you're doing now, because it's exciting life events for you going on.
Yeah, sure. So after 7 years of being a journalist, I've recently transitioned to the analyst world. I've joined the venerable Chris Quilty at Quilty Analytics, which is a consulting, they use the term boutique, which I had never heard outside of flowers, but it's a boutique consulting firm focused on the space and satellite industry. So we do research on the industry and investment banking. Oh, there, it's right there on the screen. Research and investment banking and strategic advisory services for like M&A activity and things like that. The team is really well versed in the satellite and space industry. They know tons of stuff. Chris Quilty is somebody who I used to quote a lot as a writer, and actually was probably one of the first interviews I ever did. And he just like was very patient with me and showed me the ropes for a lot of SATCOM stuff, which, as you guys know, can be really dense and really complicated and tricky to understand. And their firm is growing, and I'm excited to be working with them.
That's awesome. I have to imagine that as a journalist, like the satellite industry is, mostly private companies, and so they're not publishing their P&Ls every quarter to your inbox. Like you must have had to have done a lot of quasi analytics as part of that job anyway. This is probably a more of a natural transition than you might assume.
It
I'm
is
asking.
actually. I mean, when I would look at like space Twitter, which is like a very fun subset of the Twitterverse, there were times when space Twitter would have like whole freak out sessions over something, usually NASA related. So everybody is suddenly writing in hopes of posting something in like the next 60 minutes or whatever it was. And I was just on the outside looking in on a lot of those things. I mean, I covered all of the major satellite operators, which happens to be the majority of spacecraft launches. So when there was a launch, I was definitely on Twitter. I was very active and all those things. But when a rover descended onto Mars, or when there was a major flyby, or things like that, and people were having a moment, I was just watching as a fanboy, enjoying. So it was a lot of analytic stuff, following companies and publicly traded calls, reading through Securities and Exchange Commission's documents for interesting things that companies are not usually happy to disclose, things like that. So it's not a bizarre transition at all.
Jakes doesn't know what to do with this. He's like, I usually love the analytics, but somebody loves analytics more than me.
No, it's really cool.
The funny thing though is when Caleb was describing that as like all the hot topics were, other NASA events or the launches itself, all of a sudden satellites got like drama filled. There was satellites versus astronomer battles. There's FCC versus everyone battles. There's like a lot of hot drama that's been in the satellite world. So was that true? Are you feeling like is there a thing that we should be curious about where you're like, being capital J journalism is a little tiring, and this other thing where I can focus on this particular aspect of essentially what you were doing before, but putting it together in a different package? Was that something that you've been curious about for a while, or was it just a nice opportunity that you like?
Capital J journalism was definitely tiring. It's a great thing to be involved in, so like not at all bashing it. It is not at all for the faint of heart. Well, like you said, it did become this drama-filled world, and there was this intersection between like mainstream journalism and I say mainstream because before joining SpaceNews, I was with Via Satellite, and I was a little bit more embedded in like the trade press of the satellite world. And like that's not the stuff that's like the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Yeah. But enter Starlink and the British government buying out OneWeb, and like Jeff Bezos being like, sure, let's launch thousands of satellites, and suddenly everyone's paying attention. So you do have this strange new world where things that used to be like mundane and like very techy and like political and like just like straight up strange. Like the satellite industry is a weird, amazing industry, but like I don't know where else you can go where it's like, oh, in order to understand this world, you have to understand spectrum policy. You will no longer bat an eye at millions of dollars. It better be hundreds of millions or more, and then you'll start paying attention. And like, oh, by the way, like everything goes to space. And yes, the whole world is actually involved. Like every regulator. I was talking to a friend of mine just yesterday, actually, because he and his wife took a vacation to Sharm el Sheikh, Egypt. And I was like, you went where? And they're like, yeah, there was a whole bunch of people there from all over the world. We didn't know why. I was like, well, only because the World Radio Communications Conference was there. Of course.
And they were like, wait, that's who those people were that were in our hotel?
So it was strange. And over the course of my time as a journalist, it didn't start out that way. When I had started writing, I think that some companies were like quietly filing with the ITU, but nobody really knew about it. And so you fast forward to 2015, 2016, when Telesat's like, oh yeah, we've had a ITU filing for a mega constellation for several years now. We're ahead of everybody else. We just have to place the order for our satellites, which we're still waiting on them do. But
Building
things
some
like
others
that
and
where
selling them to other people though. It doesn't stop 'em. Are you down
things
with
like
this
that
news,
where I
Jake?
guess
Is
in the
this
work.
this is in your wheelhouse, right, Jake? This is like when you bring on a planetary science on Off-Nominal.
We were talking before this, and I'm like, I need you to run this show, man, because like, I listen to every Miko episode, but when it goes into the spectrum policy, I'm just like, I have no idea what you're
Most of those
talking
are just
about.
me calling Caleb, though. Here, you use this airwaves for 40 minutes, please.
I just like I need to get to the end of the podcast round. He's like, here's the deal. It's just like this is important, this isn't, and think about this more. Like, gotcha. I'm in. I'm on it. Excellent. I did not know about the radio communications conference. That was not on my radar.
Hey, you could have had a pleasant vacation in Egypt. I just wondered why, like, you're seeing, I don't know, Koreans and Egypt and Brazilians and everybody else.
When you were talking about the fact that, like, you were writing in this area of the space industry that's really important to the space industry, but you don't have to write those like stories that are more for somebody out there to grasp who's never heard of spaceflight before. You were in this kind of weird, like, your stuff was approachable to those people, but they probably wouldn't have clicked on that. But to people that would click on it, it's super informative stuff. Do you feel like that was a easier spot to write because you didn't feel like you had to rush to get the first story out about OSIRIS-REx jamming full its tag SAM with samples? Like, you didn't have to be that person that's out there saying, I've got the first story about this thing that the whole world cares about. Do you feel like maybe you're more natural fit for this more like Quilty Analytics side is you're writing to that audience still, but in a different format? Is there anything like that that you've been thinking about lately?
I would say it was a more enjoyable format because my approach to journalism and writing was one where I wanted to write something that would be preferably uniquely valuable to the reader. And that's not to discredit like a NASA spacecraft like grabbing a piece of an asteroid. That's super awesome. But I didn't want to be one of like 800 journalists that were going to write about that. I really valued writing things that people who cared about the satellite industry and wanted to see, like, I look at the satellite industry as the beginning of the commercial space sector. A lot of people talk about commercial space as like, oh, they know Virgin Galactic and human space flight, and they think about going to Mars and all those things. And you can see it. I think I've mentioned on We Have Miko in the past that SpaceX has built up its credibility launching satellites for SES and Intelsat, Tycom, operators around the world, and now their own Starlink satellite system. And it's really those spacecraft that are the entry level to commercial space. And everything else that we hope for in commercial space begins here. So I liked covering that and showing what is going on in commercial space now, how people are using space to try and make the world a better place, whether it's tracking ships that are doing illegal fishing or making sure that everyone can watch the Olympics, or the push globally to have universal broadband, which now involves a significant space component. All of those things were really interesting to me and were very scarcely reported on. So I liked shining a light on those things in the hope that that story will be known when we have a more expansive space presence and we understand how we got there.
There's always those pie charts that's like, here's how much money people make in space, and it's like launch satellites. It's just enormous difference. And one is obviously much more easy to talk about, and it's much more engaging and it's more awesome to witness because it's a rocket, and how can you not enjoy that? But I always think about like one of my favorite things to throw it back to DC last year is at the back of Udvar Hazy, right behind the space shuttle. There's that, I think it's an old Sirius satellite bus. And it's so normally so abstract to talk about like satellite launches and things like that and satellite buses. When you stand next to one, you're like, holy shit, this thing is enormous. Look at what it does. And you can finally actually like stand and look at a thing. And it makes a lot more sense we were there with a bunch of space nerds, so we were looking at like thrusters and antenna arrays and like super nerdy stuff. But when I would be there with family and explain like this is the thing that is in the rocket that we're always watching, there's a different moment where people can finally connect to the thing. So I admire your ability to write at a level that is like approachable about a thing that makes a shit ton of money and is very obscure to most people out there. I love that, and it's probably why you've been on Miko so much, because I'm like, this is exactly the kind of thing that I like doing.
You have the bravery to start writing the story at the point where everyone turns off the live stream.
It's like sort of my backstory, I guess. Like when I was in high school, I ran track, and my race was the 2 mile, which is the one where everybody just stops caring. So it was like, no. Like the actual team wins or loses based on how everyone does, including this race. But it's okay.
So long.
I'll do
it's
it.
so much longer than all the other ones.
I've taken the 2 mile of the space industry.
I like it.
Yeah, there's a title. Write that one down, somebody.
It's funny though, because like it's so true. I find myself there every once in a while where I see something and I'm like, I want to like do a podcast about this or tweet about this, and I think it's important, but no one else is talking about it. And then I have all this like self-doubt. I'm like, am I making this like out of nothing? Like nobody cares about this. Like, why am I trying to, it's a really hard thing to try and like, be confident in shouting out to the world. Right. So
should we talk about some of this news that we've been hearing lately, though? We got some satellite stuff, Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
You thought this was going to be a puff piece for Caleb Henry, how he's the best person in the world. No. In fact, we're here for some business. So while I was gone, Jake, SpaceX sells satellites now. Would you like a satellite?
Apparently.
Would you like a satellite?
I
get you a great deal on a satellite.
I mean, they probably do have good prices, right?
Good prices for them.
That's probably the point,
for
right?
themselves. What do you make of this story? Was this something you knew about for a while, Caleb? Were you hearing about this? Got any little birdies? Is this now proprietary? Do I have to pay you to tell me if you have little birdies?
Can you give up your sources now that you're not a journalist?
So I didn't know about this, but I also was out of the loop for like 2 weeks in between jobs. And that's when the SpaceX and L3 Harris winning, I think it was SDA contracts was announced. So even now I'm still playing a little bit of catch up. It's weird to think that like just 2 weeks of being like, no, I won't follow what's going on, was enough to like catapult me back to the Stone Age. That's what it feels like.
Try 6 and a kid.
Fair. I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
But I guess thoughts on SpaceX building satellites for others. So I have 2 thoughts on it. The first is that SpaceX is building Starlink in order to make money to fuel their Mars ambitions. So if they can build more spacecraft and do it in a way that makes a profit, then that's great. And missile warning satellites for DoD is a great way to do that. It's not competitive with telecommunications, with global broadband. It allows them to use the economy of scale that they've built. I think it's 120 satellites a month they said that they're building, which is really unprecedented. It mirrors what they've done with the rideshare business with Starlink and with Falcon 9. They said, hey, if we have excess capacity, we'll launch somebody else's spacecraft for a marginal fee that helps out SpaceX at the end. That part is not surprising. What would actually surprise me is if they built LEO broadband satellites for somebody else. I don't see them doing that. I think that would be a competitive interest. So I doubt that Telesat LEO would have SpaceX as their manufacturer, or OneWeb, or Bezos, or any of those. I think SpaceX knows where to draw the line on those things, but they've come up with some really exciting technology. I think the most comparable mass satellite manufacturing before the current era, or no, this is still the current era, I guess, would be Iridium Next. I think Iridium Next reached a peak of about a satellite a week with Thales Alenia Space, and that was after years of prep. SpaceX still took years of prep, but like 120 a month is just
years
insane.
of prep, but it was way more than that.
Yeah. So they are revolutionizing satellite manufacturing in a way that's not dissimilar to how they revolutionized launch. And their willingness to share that in non-competitive ways is it's only a plus for that.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised that they were like inventing a new bus. That was like if you had told me they were like repurposing Starlink, chassis for whatever, I was like, oh yeah, obviously you do that. But that they're going to invent this whole new, because it's supposed to be bigger, right?
I think I heard some people tell me that. I mean, I also read that piece of info that came out from the SDA contract. There's like the day that they announced the awards, they announced we would like somebody to launch these, which that's the other side for SpaceX. They can sell more satellites, they can launch more satellites, and just keep the whole thing going round. And in that document had like two different lines. One was 300 something kilogram spacecraft that used, what did I say? Do you remember what I said on the show, Jake? On my own podcast that you probably didn't listen to? Some other propellant. It's been a while since I looked at the paper. And then one of the other satellites were 1,000 kilograms. Didn't say anything about propulsion on that one. So it matches enough of what I've picked up from various other places that it is like 4 times bigger than their Starlink bus. So I'm actually curious if that's, like the Starlink bus we're at now was not the one that they originally planned, and this is like a different thing that they can pack more of in a single launch. There's like some, the Tintin bus. That's what I'm thinking of. It was a different thing. So I wonder if it's that and this, what actually became Starlink, were these two kind of competing situations within SpaceX. But they said, the other one actually we could do for everyone else out there. It's interesting behind-the-scenes stuff that we may know eventually, but... Man, the thing that I'm still annoyed at is that...
Tintin was much bigger.
Right, it was at
Tintin
least
was way bigger,
right? 1,000 kilograms-ish?
It's not crazy to think that SpaceX probably had like concept art for other satellite designs that Tintin might have been closer to, because those were, I don't remember their weight, but they were certainly much bigger. I mean, they only used 2 as ride shares when they launched a radar satellite for a Spanish operator.
Yeah.
And then the actual Starlink.
IKEA flat packed, so.
I feel like I've heard some rumors that there was a bigger falling out around the Tintin era. But
I think there was some some like hiring turnover that was publicized.
Might be one way to put it. I don't know. I've heard other things, but I don't know.
Doesn't matter how, it's still turnover.
No, but can I get one thing off of my? I've just been annoyed at this. SpaceX built a gigantic rocket called Falcon Heavy. SpaceX makes a lot of satellites. Why have they not sent one of these goddamn satellites to Mars?
Well, who's there to talk to?
I don't actually care. They just should do it. They got all these satellites. They got rockets. They want to go to Mars. Make a statement, Do it.
I was thinking about this a lot recently because of Starship sends me down this road every few weeks, but like if they want to keep that sort of end goal, SpaceX is really good at iterating, right? So they'll find some sort of stepwise fashion to get to that. And I don't know if just firing one off to Mars is in that step. Like I think they might do it to the moon way sooner than they would Mars, right? Like they're going to start. We've seen that is an RFI, I think, from NASA on the lunar telecommunications network, like something in orbit, similar to what the Chinese did with the
Chichao.
Did
I get that right?
Maybe.
Seems close.
I can never remember them. I always have to look them up before I say them on the podcast, and I did not do that this time. But yeah, so like NASA has this RFI. They're gonna there's a lot of times where the NASA RFIs are like coming out because they know someone can fulfill it now, and so like I feel like this is kind of that thing where it's just like, hey, show us what you can do here, and then maybe they'll throw up some sort of global communications network on the moon for Artemis, and then they'll use that to iterate further. Like they'll get there, but I guess at some point they do need to figure out long distance comms, though, right? That's kind of the tricky bit. But
I don't know. People are yelling at me that it's too expensive and a vanity project, and that sounds right up the alley of.
Yeah, I don't know if it's too expensive.
I don't think so.
If the satellites
they have no problem getting money. They're getting cash money, as has been popular in the Discord.
Year.
Apparently, they've been good at cash money.
Yeah, they have.
Anyway, that's the thing. I just been annoyed by that. Only because I was thinking the other day about when we were at Falcon Heavy, and I think the show we did after that, we were talking about like, man, they got to use this to get something to Mars pretty soon, because, like, maybe Elon was right and they should have bailed on Falcon Heavy. And when Gwen said, nope, we already sold one of these, I don't know, man. The more time goes on, the more I think maybe Elon was right about that.
I wonder how many times SpaceX has like knocked on NASA's door, being like, "We'll sell you a real cheap comms orbiter to fill your gap right now," right? Like,
no, that's in your dreams, Jake. Come on.
It is in my dreams, but it solves a problem that NASA has. They would want that sort of bleeding edge job. Like that's a thing that SpaceX would be like, "We'll subsidize it. Like, give us $10 million, we'll do it. Like, we're gonna do it anyway, so just like give us a little bit of money for it." Like, that'd be totally up their alley, I feel like. And I don't know, but that's my thought.
All right, new thing. Caleb brought up OneWeb is back from the dead. I didn't expect all of a sudden there to be OneWeb launches on the calendar. Was I an idiot for thinking that? This seemed way quicker than I was prepared for.
I think it is still a surprise that OneWeb is back already. It's not a surprise that they are resurrected from bankruptcy. I think the surprise for everyone is the timing, right? So going back to Iridium and using that as the example, like Motorola invested, it was over $1 billion. And Iridium, I'm just trying to pull this off the top of my head. So if I remember it all right, Motorola invested over $1 billion in Iridium. They got tired of it because they saw it as like a science project and not an actual business, and they ultimately ended up detaching from it, and Iridium was sold in bankruptcy court for like $25 million or something like that. So like it was a pittance of the amount that was put into it. The surprise with OneWeb is that they had like around $3.4 billion put into them. They did not launch an entire system before going bankrupt, and now they've been purchased at with $1 billion investment that's going to be put into them between the UK and Bharti Airtel and Bharti Global in India. And I think everybody knows that more money will still be needed to complete the OneWeb system. So it's very different in that regard, that it's an ongoing expense. And that does just make me wonder what it's going to look like. I think SoftBank had talked a big game about being very patient with OneWeb and knowing that it was going to be a long ride to seeing them in orbit and seeing them successful. And somewhere along the line, they lost that patience. And I mean, that's a terrible thing. If you're a company and your investor says like, sure, we know it'll take you 5-10 years to make this into anything, and then after 2 years it's like, I'm bored of this.
There's still a lot of billions, but just bored of this particular usage of my billions. It's different than like what I think the Branson projects are going through right now, which is like, it's a little tight and during a pandemic for a company that's all like luxury travel. So go find some cash elsewhere.
Did you see the I think Peter Beck from Rocket Lab, what did he tweet, that it cost them like $180 million to get to where they are versus $1 billion for
He's getting a little spicy. He's getting a little spicy out there.
It was a little gloaty. It was kind of funny.
I mean, when you've launched a bunch of times, you can flex.
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you told anyone like the day that Rocket Lab had their first launch that they would be the only small sat launcher operating in this late in 2020, people would be like, no way, there's a billion of these guys out there. Like, it's crazy. So I do like the flexing from Peter Beck. I'm a pro Beck flex.
Pro Beck flex. Another thing that is interesting to me about OneWeb is, of course, the UK has had this interest in a position, navigation, and timing system, their own GPS. And prior to OneWeb going bankrupt, there was already discussion by OneWeb officials about a Gen 2 system, which struck a lot of people, myself included, as a bit odd because it sort of suggested a dissatisfaction with where they were with the Gen 1 system. And now it's really interesting because if they're going to go forward, and given their launch cadence, it suggests that they're going to go forward entirely with the Gen 1 system. But since they were already planning the successor, that could be the pathway for the UK to get their own GPS, their own Galileo, if they wanted it. It just seems like a very straightforward route.
I was going to ask about that because I don't really understand. I mean, there was a lot of, it got all wrapped up in the Brexit stuff. So like, it's really hard to read about it because everyone's just like shooting their mouth off one way or
everyone's
another.
fighting the previous war.
Yeah, everyone's got to let you know what they think about Brexit. And so there was...
All right, Commonwealther, keep your shit up there.
There was all this stuff about like, oh, they bought OneWeb for like a Hail Mary to make Brexit work, and they didn't even like read the documents, and they bought the wrong satellite. And I'm like, no, that wouldn't have actually happened, right? Like, what is that? So that's what it was. They thought that the second generation would be their ticket into GPS, so they don't have to do the Galileo thing.
Look, I would hope so. I don't know what went on in the UK. I know that when the CEO of Bharti, he spoke during an Israel press conference and mentioned being on Downing Street. Forgive me, my ignorance.
You got it.
Yeah, Downing Street. You know, the UK.
Number 10.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, really dingy looking door. They should clean that thing up every once in a while.
So, but he went there. He met with them, and given all the money that the UK poured into just studies over a GPS or GNSS system, I would hope they spent millions of dollars on studies. And like, you know, I could have told them the difference between OneWeb and GPS. Like, it doesn't take that much money to
This is what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, we could hash it out right here. 3 guys at their houses over beer.
Everything I know about OneWeb we've said on this podcast, and I knew it wasn't GPS. So
it's my genuine hope that so I think that any headline that said they bought the wrong system, that's misleading, because they surely knew that a telecom system was not a GNSS system. I think if they bought it with any hope of blending GNSS, it was about potential and long-term potential, not a near-term fix. But like you said, Brexit, I mean, what I've seen of Brexit reactions, not that American politics is particularly civil these days, but if you really want to get people to just foam at the mouth and opine excessively about something else going on in the world, it's going to be Brexit. So you're going to get a lot of fluff and stuff.
As Lars points out in the Discord chat, which one were they supposed to buy? Like, there's not a floating around GPS compatible system to buy. So it's not like, oops, read this wrong. Was supposed to buy. I'm trying to do OneWeb backwards in my head real quick, and I just totally could not do that.
Web one.
All right,
Web one.
Got to write that down
Yeah.
later. The second thing that I don't know if I was just like reading into this too much, but I felt like the 2 things that were floated were, hey, maybe we could do our own navigation system, an FU to Galileo, and like maybe we'll have to find some new launch vehicles and FU to the very France and Germany and Italy centric launch infrastructure in ESA and Arianespace. Like, it did feel like a couple of these things that were floated out there were needling the European partners a little bit, but I might have just been putting my own, like, you know, spin on this whole Brexit infused drama. I don't know. It's a fun storyline if that's true, though. Like, there's one guy in the office that knows how it works, and he's like, man, I hate the guys that do the launch thing. I'm going to post some of these stories out there, throw some floaters out there just to get everyone riled up about this and see if we can shake a couple things loose elsewhere. But maybe I'm just reading too much into it.
I mean, the Canadian government bought a bunch of submarines that just that couldn't drive and just caught fire, I think, and spent most of their life in a port somewhere in Europe. So, I mean, I guess it's possible for them to, for governments to screw up a big purchase. But yeah,
we've got a couple of those.
Right. So yeah,
we got a couple of those.
What's your airplane one? We got that airplane one too. We both got it, I think. But anyway.
Oh, you're buying that from us, so have fun with that.
Oh, well, you're on the good side of that deal? Oh, damn.
It's okay. We can't even come up to Canada right now, so
That's a fair point.
Yeah, and we can't come down, so.
Oh,
I was telling someone the other day, I haven't been to the United States since, I think, January, which is like the longest I've gone in a very, very long time without popping by to see you guys.
it's true. You mostly just pick up your mail, you mean, right? Like,
I do. Well,
yeah, yeah. You're not like popping around the U.S. doing meetups everywhere. You're just picking up mail.
I usually get the mail. I go to a gas station, get the cheap gas, see what kind of weird chocolate bars y'all have, and then pick one of those out and then head home. That's what I usually do. Yeah.
What else we got? You were all into this lunar comms thing, Jake, and I feel like we trampled that a little bit. You got anything else in that?
I mean, does anyone have anything about it? I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. I think I've said my thoughts, but
yeah,
I'm excited for it. I think it's a cool new like space for companies to be involved in all of a sudden. Like, just that the whole effort to really expand the use case for space and getting more people involved and getting more cooperation, more projects that are collaborating together and all that kind of thing. I think it's a really good fit for that. So that's what makes me excited. I like seeing, every time we talk about like space stuff that's going to be great in the future, sometimes it just feels so like kind of hollow, or it's like, yeah, one day, like this is important because one day
a lander's going to land and a rover's going to grab this sample that's cached by the rover that I love and have talked about all summer.
Amazing. But then when you actually see that happen, it's like it's even better. It's even sweeter, right? So that's kind of why I like it. And we talked a lot about how cheap launch is going to make all this cool stuff happen in space. Well, like, look, now they're looking at building a comms network on the moon. That's awesome.
The one thing that does make me a little nervous about it is that Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is this incredible spacecraft that does amazing imagery, but it is there because one time Project Constellation exists, and that was the first mission of that, was like, let's go scout some landing sites, and then everything else fell apart except for Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and it's still doing its thing. And every once in a while I remember the fact that, oh yeah, that is the vestigial mission from the previous era of we should go to the moon sometime. So I just hope that doesn't happen again, but I guess there's an election. So that's a whole thing.
This is the worst off-nominal for trying to predict what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, this episode would be immediately uninteresting to people in the future if we talked about the election.
Yeah.
Should we talk about some picks, and then we probably got a couple other topics to get into of like various what's going on in our life kind of situation.
Picks? What does that mean?
Well, you did yours kind of already with Astronomy on Tap. You jumped the gun because you're excellent like that. I think Jake and I both said that we've got a weird one that's a little outside of our normal recommendation for people.
It is a little weird, yeah.
Do you want to go last?
I can go first if you want. Sure.
I don't know if it's going to be a long topic.
I'm going to open a beer for this.
Okay.
I love it.
So, so this one is like, it's not space related, but I found a way to make it space related. So bear with me while I tell a story. But I've made a commitment to myself to learn more about the colonial history of the Americas. I just like many people who went to school in the United States and Canada, I just wasn't really taught a lot of the key points. Like I learned a little bit about, I'm in Canada, so I learned a little bit about Jacques Cartier and the Plains of Abraham. There were some French and British people shooting guns at each other. Hudson's Bay Company, end of story. That's
the soldiers that invented hockey in Newfoundland or whatever.
I don't think I even learned that, to be honest.
Right. Whatever.
Yeah. So, so that's the bit I learned. I didn't know a lot about the United States, and I definitely didn't know a lot about like everything south of the United States, which has got tons and tons of colonial history. So I decided to start reading, and I wanted to start at the source of colonialism, which was, Columbus. So I got this audiobook. It's called Admiral of the Ocean Sea. And I got multiple recommendations for it. Like I want to do Columbus. Where do I start? And they pointed this one to me. But the thing about this book is that it was written in 1941 by a retired U.S. Navy admiral turned historian.
Wow.
So, a 1940s Navy admiral, Samuel Eliot Morrison.
Is this the one? This says illustrated in 91.
That's the one, yeah. Yeah, illustrated, but the publication's 1941. And he did this cool stuff. Like he went on he actually like did the voyage. He like went on a sailing ship and they like reenacted it all. And so that's kind of how he does history. He's like wants to experience it, which is cool. But as you can imagine,
that's some Richard Garriott shit, by the way.
Yeah. 1940s naval admiral, not the wokest guy you've ever read a story about, right? So, and I knew that going into it. I was like, I know that this is going to be completely whitewashed, but I want to know what is whitewashed for when I read the better.
You're laying
stuff
the
later.
base to work from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I want to understand that, right? So I'm reading this book. It's like okay, it's fine. I'm learning a lot of stuff about the details and stuff. And predictably, the Portuguese started in Africa, and the trade was really good. They got a bunch of jewels and ivory and some slaves, and then that's fine. And then they move on to the next thing, right? And they don't talk about it at all. And I was like, well, that's fine. But the guy spends like, this is where I get to the space part. So he talks a lot about how like amazing Columbus is, like his like persistence and his bravery and his ingenuity, and like really stresses how great this guy is, and even to a point where like he's laying into like the physical description of like how tall and ruddy and like a long face and auburn hair and stands tall and just like, and you're like, you're really like obsessing about this guy.
You're checking, you're like, is this Christopher Columbus fanfic that I picked up? What's happening?
And then there was this whole chapter about the boats. It's like, okay, starting with this boat, these are the kinds of sails it had.
Oh, wow.
This is what the wood was made of. This is how big it is. We don't have a direct measurement, but I was able to get all the ratios.
I measured the hypotenuse of Christopher Columbus's abs, and then I
exactly and I think they measured it with barrels of wine, and if you did it this way and this way and this way, you'd fit this many barrels of wine, which fits in with some predictions for other boats that I found. So this is my best guess. And he like obsesses about the boats, and I'm listening to it, just kind of laughing, and then all of a sudden it clicks. I'm like, this is us with Starship. Oh my god, this is us. This is us. Like, we're watching these cameras. Like, I don't know how big it is, but I drew a line next to the.
I measured this guy up on a crane, and his hard hat is a standard hard hat size.
Exactly, and then trying to figure out how big these stupid rockets are. I was like, oh my god, this is it. And then I think back to the chapter about how amazing Columbus is, and I'm like, oh no, it's Elon Musk and how smart and amazing he is and how breaking the mold is. Oh my goodness, right? So then I just like, I had to like stop and like take a breather, and it was a fun moment for me. So now I wanted to share this book. I'm like, I don't know, a third of the way through it, and I'll finish it just because it's there's lots to learn.
I can't believe you made it as far as you did based on. How did you read through that section about the ships like entirely?
Oh yeah, well I have the audiobook, so it's like a little
Okay.
easier. But,
you had no choice. You couldn't. You were probably on a hike and you didn't have any choice. You were out of cell connection.
Well, you can skip a chapter.
Okay.
I don't know. It's fine. I want to just experience this book, so I'm gonna listen to it. But that's my story. So Admiral of the Ocean Sea. I do recommend it. Lars asked me if I actually recommend it. I do recommend it as long as you know what you're getting into and you're ready to balance that after, which I intend to do with whatever the right story is. So. And to be fair, I haven't gotten to the part where he's landed in the Caribbean.
I can't believe how slow of a burn this book is, and you're still going to listen to it.
Yeah, well, I had to talk a lot about how amazing Genoa is and stuff, but
it's pretty
maybe
nice.
It gets worse and I don't finish it. We'll see.
We're gonna circle back for an update on that.
That was
for
like
sure.
a 10 minute pick explanation.
All right, mine is similarly. You're gonna think it's stupid or non-space related, but you'll see very quickly. So social networks, they come and go. Everybody's got their favorite. Some of them get banned by governments and sold off for parts or whatever. I missed that whole story when I was out with my child. Some of them though, they die off for most people, and then you can realize that they maintain their value in other ways. Flickr. I'm gonna do a hard sale on Flickr for you because
Ooh.
everyone has bailed on Flickr in the entire world, except for whatever reason, every space agency and organization that exists. They upload all these high-res photos to Flickr. So I'm just gonna pull up what I've done was I've deleted all of the people that I used to know in my past life on Flickr, and I've deleted them all from my following list. And the only things I follow are just space accounts at this point. And the uploads here, they've got uploads from the space station, all the companies. SpaceX does all their photos here, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and everybody does their photos. So you get like insanely high-res photos directly from the space station and everywhere else. Some historical stuff. I've got like the San Diego Air and Space Museum because they do all these crazy high-res archival dumps.
Cool.
The high-rise cam direct from Mars. These photos are fantastic, and if you completely blow out everyone that you've ever followed on Twitter or on Flickr and just make it space people, it's awesome. You just log in and you've got like crazy good space photos, historical and current, and I love it. So I just want to let you know that Flickr maintains its relevancy. And what I will do, look at this photo. Come on, like let's look at this. Yeah, like great photos straight from the space station. You know, love it. So what I will do, I'll put a link in the show notes to my Flickr because you can then click on who I'm following and then pick some of them up as well. Steve Jurvetson, I should put him in there too because he's got a lot of good stuff. But it's just awesome. It's great. So I often am, if you're a listener to any of our podcasts and you see the album art, I'm often pulling photos straight from Flickr because everything's there. It's wonderful. So rediscover your favorite social network of the past.
This
So
is making me
I
feel
will say,
validated.
during my days as a journalist, I very regularly used Flickr as a source for photos and imagery. They do have a fantastic collection of stuff. SpaceX does regularly post, I think usually within the same day.
Yeah, directly
within
up there.
24 hours. It's all
And
there.
all the licensing is clear.
Yeah, it's very understandable. You know what's copyrighted, what's Creative Commons. It's good stuff.
Yeah, no, I feel very validated because if you remember way back in the early days of We Martians, I actually had an Instagram account. I think I kept it up for
Yeah,
like,
you
I don't
did.
know, a year or two. That's where I got all the photos, man.
Oh,
I was
yeah?
like,
Okay.
whenever
See,
I
this is
could, yeah,
great.
because it was all in high res. So, yeah, I would like sometimes I would search for a photo like through Google and then find the one I wanted and then go to Flickr to find the high res version of it because you could even search like with the NASA image tag and then at Flickr and you'd find it. That could be good stuff. So.
It's great. I'm telling you, it's fantastic. So I just am like grabbing all these images and I make it my screensaver. I've got this whole folder of like images over time, and I don't know. It's some nerdy stuff. I thought this show I would come back having had all this time off, and I would have like watched some new show or read some new book. I didn't do any of that. I just like didn't. I don't know. I also totally assume that Jake, you tried to watch or you might have not even tried to watch that new Right Stuff because it's your least favorite thing in the world to redo the old space stories that we've already seen a billion times.
I haven't tried to watch it
Yeah.
yet. No, I probably will. Like, let's be serious. But yeah. Did we ever? We did. I'm trying to think. Did anyone pick Away yet? But it's canceled now. And
Oh yeah, I missed that. Should I watch it? Should I not watch it? Is it too similar to that other one that we liked that got canceled as well?
I'm only 2 episodes in, so I can't really make a good judgment of it yet.
Caleb, are you in on any of these?
I am not. The only recent space show that I've watched is The Expanse, which
Good one though.
I've enjoyed a lot. I know season 5 is coming out soon.
Oh yeah, that trailer
Yeah,
looked great too.
December, right?
Probably gonna hop on that train.
Yeah. Season 4 I was not super big on.
No?
I don't know. It was missing the expansy stuff that I loved.
It
But
felt
season
more like
5 trailer
Battlestar
looks
Galactica.
like it's back to my. It felt like what?
Battlestar Galactica.
It did kind of feel like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But season 5 trailer looks like back to the wheelhouse. I'm
I'll
excited.
just say I really enjoyed just like seeing like visual depictions of colonies that like weren't just like the moon and Mars. Like when they went to Ganymede, I got super spoiler alert. I guess I should have
Yeah.
warned. But like, there's some
Statute of
stuff that
limitations
takes
has
place.
passed on that.
It's not just the usual suspects as far as like where in the solar system are you going to go, and so I really like that. Yes, this is good.
Yeah,
This
the
is
Mormons. The Mormons are the best in that show.
creative. Also good. A surprising addition to sci-fi. Yes.
Yeah, it was a surprising addition. Oh, that's funny.
That's what
I
I
guess
got.
it should
We
have
got
been.
anything
You've
else?
got Contact.
Oh,
I was just saying the movie Contact is also. I think that it's too late for spoilers on that one, but that's
way too
Mormon.
late. That's like decades late on that.
So the Mormons have been in space for some time now. We're counting all these different things.
I gotta rewatch Contact. It's been too long. I haven't watched it in, God, I don't know, 15 years or something. So
Jake, it feels good to be back.
yeah.
It feels great to be back.
Do you want to do like a dad update? I don't know.
Dad
what do you want?
update.
I don't know, like, what's it like being a dad now? Because
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. What have you been up to the past 6 months?
We got child was born. Tour de France was on. We got super into cycling. So watching the Vuelta right now. Cycling is great for when you're off for extended periods of time because it's on during the day in the U.S. Right? Because all the tournaments are over in Europe,
Right,
so
right.
you can wake up and then put it on. It's fantastic. And just hanging out, reading. You got to read to the kids, so I've been reading them SpaceNews out of my RSS reader. He doesn't know the difference. Knows a lot about satellites from Caleb. He read him a couple of Caleb articles. The precious last few Caleb articles that existed out there. And it's great,
I will say there's one more article actually from me that is supposed to come out because they held it after I left. I did an interview with Ajit Pai from the FCC to talk about all things space with him, and I don't know when SpaceNews is gonna release it. I'm sort of on the outside looking in now, but stay tuned. Don't be shocked if you see my byline.
The
sometime in
final
October.
article.
The
you
last
don't still
one.
have a login to the CMS or anything, no?
Alas.
I feel like there's always that, like, the lost interview, like such and such person who was a historical figure, the lost interview. This is like Caleb Henry, the lost article, the one that it's out there.
There's a lost KSP history episode too.
Oh,
Yeah.
what? All right,
Yeah,
we gotta
there's
get into
one-
that
there's
at
one-
some point.
There's one that I have pictures of that I never posted. So
Whoa,
there you go.
damn. Caleb, I don't know that you're gonna have as many plugs as you did in the past, but where can people find you out there?
Well, right now, I guess you can still find me on Twitter. So I am at the same account. I've changed _SN to _QA for Quilty Analytics, but we're still there and alive. And unfortunately, I guess for the masses, the reports that I'll be writing are behind a paywall. But I am working on a couple right now. It's definitely fun. I'm still enjoying writing about the space industry, and I'm still here and open to opine on things from time to time.
The
So,
best news I've
you're
ever
gonna-
heard. The biggest thing I was worried about was like, is Caleb? Did I lose Caleb? Is he not gonna be able to be on the show anymore?
So yeah, those are the ways we're still here. You know what? Actually, I should have tried to use this to plug. We just did. I didn't write it, but Chris Quilty wrote a report on flat panel antennas, which was really fun because, of course, it ties into the mega constellations and all that stuff. And I'll just say we're doing some really cool research on things that are critical to the space and satellite industry, and I'll definitely be sharing those things on Twitter.
Lars in the chat wants to know if you're going to have more hot takes now that you're not a capital J journalist.
So one of the things that I'm like trying to do is I realize that people want more opinions from me. Like people would ask me my opinion on things, and I would give very neutral statements because I was a journalist. And so like I suppose maybe it could be a point of pride that like even like a month or so after that, if you ask me my opinion on something, I'm still very much deer in the headlights. I'm like, well, here's what's been reported. Here are the things.
Here's
Come
the
on
evidence.
over, come on over, friend.
Yeah, welcome to the land of pundits.
I'm working on getting to a space where a place where I have opinions on things and I can share them in a way that like I hope to still be as devoid as possible of bias, but also willing to share like whether I think something is going to succeed or fail, or why I think an approach is good or not. So we're getting there, but the ship has been sailing in the same direction for 7 years, so it turns slow.
When you're ready for opinions, we've got the platforms for you of all variety. Jake, do you have stuff to plug?
Nothing super particular right now, but we're out of the summer, and I'm finally getting back into the groove of like regular interviews over on We Martians, so it's been fun. We had a really cool episode with Charity Phillips Lander. She had a white paper for the Decadal Survey, which is about making a spacecraft to explore a lava tube on Mars, which is just like awesome. So we talked all about like what you can find in a cave. That was pretty fun. And then I had Abby Freeman on, who's the deputy project scientist for Curiosity. So kind of the big wig. We talked about Vera Rubin Ridge, and they had this huge science release on Vera Rubin Ridge. So just learning about some of the crazy stuff. I found like evidence of big groundwater swells up there. So it's pretty neat.
Is that an RSL?
No, this is like just like tons of groundwater.
Is this an RSL? Is that mean?
Is this?
Yeah, so it's been fun, and there's some more cool stuff coming, and I got to start really thinking about Perseverance landing, because that's
dude,
that's coming, man.
That's one holiday cycle away.
Yeah, I feel like
you're already done Thanksgiving too.
Yes, we are. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to get ready. I'm trying to get organized. So, what about you?
I'm back.
You're back.
I did a couple episodes, talked about the election. That one will age great, I'm sure. I don't know where we go from here, but I'm back. I'm figuring things out.
Are you going to put out an episode between now and the election?
If something fun happens, I guess. But I feel like it's about to be a black hole for everything but the election. We'll see. I'm still figuring out how to be a dad podcaster, to be honest. Yeah. I did a couple episodes, like morning nap, get to the podcast studio, but daycare hasn't started yet, so I'm still off from day job. I'm still like full-time dadding and doing a podcast occasionally, so bear with me a couple more weeks. But we're doing this, and it's great, so everything's good, man. I'm happy.
It's very nice to have you back.
I am so glad to be back, and I didn't really miss it much. I thought I would miss a lot more news, but I felt like
we were talking about this. You picked a good time.
Yeah, it felt like that. Everyone was like, "Oh, the end of summer and school starting, and it's still a pandemic," so nothing happened for a while, and it was
good planning last Christmas.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right after that whole pandemic started, and no one knew yet. And I was like, I got a feeling this whole pandemic life is coming.
Yeah. That's great.
Well, bye everybody.
Bye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, end of test.
See ya.
That's how it goes.
YouTube, thanks for hanging out.
Mm-hmm.
It's always a pleasure.
Appreciate it.
We will see you on another time. I'm sure Kayla will be back. So
He will definitely be back.
Of course.
Planning on it.
Bye, YouTube.